when even a child sees pornography, the body can often have a response. It might be a response of, oh, I feel like afraid of what I saw, or I feel like disgusted by what I saw, or I feel curious about what I saw. If we don't talk to our kids, then that disgusting feeling or the scared feeling could move them to shame, but the curiosity piece could move them back to pornography. If we haven't told them, buddy, this is not good for you, sweetheart, this is bad for you, then they could go back to pornography because we haven't prepared them to know to stay away from it. So there are multiple reasons why we need to give our kids those tools to reject pornography.
Well, hi and welcome to Practice Makes Parent, where we understand it's not about perfection, but about transformation. I'm Dr. Danny Huerta.
And I'm Rebecca St. James. Thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to do this podcast and so glad that you're here. And Danny, I was just going to open actually with quite a personal question, and I think it would be really a blessing and a benefit to our listeners. But if you're comfortable with sharing, how old were you when you first encountered pornography? And I'm sure it was an accidental one.
Rebecca.
Yeah, I know. Sorry to just dive right in.
That's important to know our history with sexuality and how we were introduced to it, whether good or bad, and where those conversations took place. And I remember looking in, it was my cousin's bathroom. He was living at our house. And I was just curious about this one nook by the bathroom.
How old were you?
And I was about sixth grade, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I was going, I never saw this little area. And I opened it, and there were magazines there that he had purchased. And I opened one, and boom, I mean, the brain just got hit with that. I remember that. That was it marks in your memory, and just the whole body feel, the reaction to the pictures that were there. Super seductive pictures. And it was a very impactful moment. And it was during a time when just culturally, we weren't talking openly about sex in the home. So I remember asking my dad about where babies come from. And that's when I was 8 years old, and I've shared it on the show. He said, well, when a man and a woman lay next to each other, then they have a baby. And so it was a picture that was really skewed. So I didn't want to lay next to anyone because I thought babies were going to be popping out. And then with my mom, if I brought something like that up, anything around kissing or sexuality, she seemed to dodge the question and didn't want to wake up any feelings. And when we see our kids go from 5th grade to 8th grade, they've gone from smaller, younger kids, they're transitioning into this young adult. And we don't think that they're being exposed to sexual things, but the culture, the world around us, even more so now beyond magazines. I mean, kids in my private practice are being exposed at 7, 8 years old. And that's with maybe going to a friend's house, or they're at their locker at school and middle school, and another child is showing it something to them, or video games, phones. There's so many different places. So as parents, we need to be aware of the fact that our kids are most likely going to be exposed to something within the continuum of pornography. And that could be from swimsuit type things all the way to lingerie, to full nakedness and beyond, that our kids try to grapple with, and then they feel shame about, and then they don't bring it up. So you as parents need to guide the conversation and bring the topic up. Now, Rebecca, how have you guys have been intentional about some of this now with your kids at their age? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Focus, we have this amazing program that you facilitated putting together. Danny, you know very well what a wonderful resource Focus has, and it's launched into the teen years. And wow, I have enjoyed doing that with Gemma. She's 11, and we've been watching the videos that you guys put together that are so awesome, and journaling and answering questions together and going on dates. And it's been absolutely marvelous. And I'm real particularly passionate about this issue of sexuality and talking about it from a biblical and Christian perspective, because I spent a lot of my ministry speaking up about honoring God in relationships and the importance of that. And so it's a passion of mine And also, I think the thing that I realize as a parent, Danny, is that our perspective on this, and whether it's godly or not, does impact our kids. Like we have to understand what our mentality is, because for better or for worse, what we think about sexuality will impact our kids. And so having a biblical perspective and really, wanting to honor God with it, I think is very, very important. And having these intentional conversations, whether we handled this well in our youth or not, talking about it with our kids and encouraging them to honor God and live biblically with their sexuality is just such an important thing.
It's about setting vision instead of creating fear around the topic of sex. And it's not a bad word. It's about bringing the differences together. And hopefully we set that up on our show consistently, that as parents, you've got a great invitation. You've got a great opportunity there. And we've put together some great conversation starters for you dads. And if you text DAD to 32728, you'll get some great conversation starters. Again, it's 32728. Text the word DAD there, and you'll get those right to your phone. And know that intentional conversations about a variety of things is important, not just sexuality, but just life in general, friendships, identity. So much opportunity there for us as parents. And coming up on this episode, we'll be taking back control of the narrative when it comes to explaining sexuality and specifically pornography to our kids.
And our wonderful guest today will tell us ways to create a healthy sexual culture in our homes and give us tips on how to have age-appropriate conversations with our children, because it doesn't have to be awkward, does it, Danny? I think it's all in how we go about it. And we're getting some wonderful tools and wonderful tips today.
And Rebecca, challenges I've heard several parents say over the years, hey, this is just a boy thing, or this is just something normal in culture. Let's press back on that. That is a narrative that has continued to grow. It really skews reality and begins to take them in a wrong direction, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, also in this episode, we have a question from a mom who is concerned about his son's choice in music and entertainment. So if you have gamers in your home, our question today is something that should help you.
Well, this conversation with Greta Eskridge is one of those important ones that we have here at Practice Makes Parent. It's a bit more on the serious side, but man, such an important conversation. I can't overemphasize that. Greta's a homeschool mom, a podcaster, a blogger, and an author. And her book is It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. And I started the conversation by asking her about her teaching career. Let's dive in. You were a teacher. How many years were you a teacher, by the way?
Well, I taught in public high school for 5 years, and then I've been homeschooling ever since. So altogether, we're at like 20 plus years of teaching.
That's amazing.
that is great. Now, you encountered, and I would assume this is at the public school, you encountered a ninth grader that was seeing some pictures, and it was you confronted that moment. Tell us about that story. What happened there?
Well, this was actually before the days of cell phones, so the ancient times. but my student, he was just a little guy, 13 years old, and he had a photo tucked in his binder. The olden days when you would put pictures inside those trapper keeper binders that we carried to school, and he had one in there, and it was really wildly inappropriate. And I would even label it as soft porn. And I was shocked that he just had the boldness to have that out for everyone to see. And so I called him out of the classroom into the hallway and asked him about that photo. And, it was torn from a magazine. It wasn't a real photo that he had taken, but still. And I just asked him about it. And I think that was very much a God moment, because that wasn't my norm. It wasn't something I really felt comfortable talking about, but I just felt like it was so important to address it with him and to help his heart understand the implications of what that photo meant, that I felt like I had to talk to him about it.
Yeah, good. Greta, it's an important thing to just park there for a moment. I remember in college, I was working on a paper, and I heard these guys laughing next to me. And I look over, and there was pornography right there in the library computer. I remember my cousin accessing pornography through magazines and had a stash put into this place in the bathroom. And I remember just opening up the door to just see what was in this compartment. And he was staying at our house, and all of a sudden I saw these magazines. I mean, you never know when kids are going to run into or where they're going to run into pornography. And now there's so much more
Easy
opportunity to be exposed to that. And I'd say accidental exposure is a huge thing for young kids, 8, 9, 10, that all of a sudden see that. But one thing that I consistently ask parents is, what do you consider to be pornography? It's a good place to start. What is pornography? What does that mean? When does it become pornography and not pornography? What would you say to that, Greta?
Well, if I were a parent and I were talking to my young kids, my answer would be very simple, very straightforward. I always say give them the least amount of details possible. So I would say something like pornography is pictures or movies of people who have no clothes on, who are showing every part of their body, including their private parts. And that is a very basic, simple definition for even a young kid to understand. If we're talking to older kids, teens, or adults, the pornography description would be something like, pornography is pictures or movies of people with no clothes on, but the intent or the purpose is for you to be aroused by what you've seen, for you to have some sort of feeling about what you're seeing. That's the purpose of it. So that's how I would explain what pornography is.
And Greta, I would add an "and" to that, because now we've got the audio pornographic things that are there, and also for kids, talking to them about the movement, especially the teenagers, the movement of the body. And then it begins, the continuum begins with those swimsuit issues and other things that are exposing the body in a sexual way. So it isn't necessarily just nakedness. There's the lingerie side. There's so many other things that are the continuum to that. So it's important to help them understand the painting of a picture of sexuality from a consumer perspective.
Yes.
That you're consuming something, and that's where pornography begins.
Yeah, and there's a gratification, a self-gratification that is the intent. And it's intended to be used.
Yes, it's using the person who's in that picture is being used.
Yes.
It's objectification, which is also something that you would want to talk about with your kids as well.
Absolutely.
And anime is another form that has come in the last decade as well.
I don't know about the audio that you just mentioned. So it's literally just audio, sexual audio.
Sexual audio. Then you have sexting now that it's come in. There's so many different ways. It's a complex topic. And
there's a lot there, and a lot for parents to be aware of. So I love that we're having this conversation. Greta, I would love to just back it up a little bit to just to your story, because you had a profoundly, I would say life-changing, but very challenging experience in your own family that was kind of the Kickstarter, I think, to your heart for this kind of ministry, and your personal knowledge of the importance of us being aware of how pornography begins a whole lot of other sexual misconduct that hurts others. So can you just speak to that? I know it's a hard and very personal topic, but are you able to just share your story?
Yeah, I really did not encounter pornography as a kid or a teen. Really did not impact my life until I was a young married mom with 3 little kids, and my husband came to me and confessed to having a porn addiction, and that led to an extramarital affair. It was obviously just the most devastating news, something that I never could have imagined being a part of our story. And as Aaron, my husband, stepped into repentance and then really healing and recovery from his addiction, it catapulted me into healing as well, because as a betrayed wife, that is incredibly important. And then it also pushed us into healing as parents, as a couple, of course, healing our marriage, but also, coming to terms with, well, how do we want to protect our kids? How do we want to give them better tools than we were given? And so each of us have pursued healing in different ways. And my story, Aaron's story, the book that I just wrote, all of that has come out of this place of brokenness, really, because what we wanted to do was to let God use our story to give a purpose to our pain. And like I said, to equip not just our own kids with better tools, but other families and kids for generations to come with the ability to understand what pornography is, what it does, and to reject it, to choose something better. And if they are pulled into pornography, to know that there is hope, there is healing, and there's freedom from it. And that has been our journey. It's been hard work, but God is faithful. And here we are today. It's been over 15 years. And now we're stepping into the place of helping men, women, and families in their journey away from pornography or to reject it altogether.
Thank you for being so generous with your story. It's really, really beautiful. The act of love that you are offering to people out of your own story. Thank you for the gift of that. We're really proud of you as our sister in the Lord. So thank you.
And at what age did you begin talking to your kids about the topic of sex? When did that begin in your home?
Gosh, I feel like our conversations about sex started actually when they were really young, just in the terms of creating a healthy culture where we weren't afraid to talk about sex, that their bodies were designed and made in God's image. And so it wasn't like a one-time conversation. It was more a building of, this is who you are. This is how God made you. And then as they grew and they needed more information or they had questions, we would answer. And that also was kind of coming out of both Aaron and I's story of growing up in families that were Christian families and loved the Lord, but our parents didn't have a ton of tools for knowing how to talk about sex, or certainly not pornography. And we recognized that we wanted to do it differently. So that's why we did that kind of the long game of, let's start at the beginning. You are made and designed in God's image. Your body is beautiful, every part of it. And how does that look like as we go through now? Our kids are teens and young adults, like sharing that message, that foundation from the beginning until, they're married, and then hopefully beyond.
Yeah, and the word sex means bringing the differences together. It's not a bad word, and it's something that God created before the fall of man. And our kids need to see that, not out of fear. And you just mentioned, I don't want them to be afraid. It's not about being afraid or fearing something. It's about being wise and understanding the real deal, what God has created. And pornography twists everything. It creates this, it actually changes us physiologically. Let's talk a little bit about that. What changes happen in a person, and how do we see that take place in a child's brain, in their life as a teen, as a young adult? What are the changes that happen if they get involved in pornography?
Well, I always like to say that pornography is bad for the body, the brain, and the heart. And so it impacts every part of us. And so let's start with the body. It can create a negative self-image in a person who's consuming pornography, the way they begin to see themselves. It can create things like depression and anxiety and stress and that comes out in their body, but also that is the impact on the brain as well. And I would say even the heart. And then if we want to talk specifically about the way porn impacts the brain, it actually creates new pathways in the brain. And that is a really important thing to know, because what happens when someone is consuming porn is they're getting this like massive hit of dopamine, this feel-good chemical that makes us want more of it. But with pornography, it's more than our brains were ever intended to get. And then that drives a person back for more and more pornography. Instead of being satisfied with the the normal amount of dopamine that is released in a sexual encounter the way God intended it to be, it's something that is far bigger and more than our brain is designed to handle. And so it becomes very addictive. And for a developing brain, an adolescent or a child's brain, that is actually destructive. So it really does have an impact on the brain, on the body, and then the heart, the way we begin to see other people. I talked earlier about objectification. When a person is consuming porn, they begin to see other people as objects, not as humans made in God's image, but as things to be used for our own benefit and then tossed aside when we don't need them anymore. So pornography has a profound impact on anyone who is consuming it. And for a child or a teen who is consuming pornography, that impact can be potentially a lifelong damaging problem because their brains and their bodies, their minds are not equipped to deal with the trauma that they're consuming.
I think one of the really scary components too, to do with what we're talking about, is that there's just these lies that are spoken to throughout all of culture, but especially to kids, that it's just no big deal. It's just not. It's not a big deal, and it's a lie. It's a lie from the enemy intended to rip off our kids and adults as well. Can you talk to about? You began to speak to the long-term effects. I mean, you spoke to so many damaging components, but of just also that it's almost like porn needs to be more and more shocking. So the more that they do it, it has to be more shocking to get that same hit or that same dopamine effect. Can you speak to that component as well?
Yeah, that's one of the really frightening aspects of pornography. Is it's something that needs, like you said, to build, like have this cumulative effect, right? There needs to be novelty. And what that means is that what you initially were watching to get that dopamine hit, it begins to not be powerful enough to be attractive to you anymore. And so there needs to be something new. And that can drive a person who's using pornography to consume things that they at first would never have considered watching, or to pursue activities outside of pornography, like having an affair or, visiting a massage parlor, all kinds of things that you can only imagine. Yes. And that's the danger of pornography is it is this deep hole that the person just can go deeper and deeper into it, into the darkness, because of that novelty impact. And that's something that I don't know that everyone understands about pornography. It's not, like you said, harmless. This no big deal. I'm just watching some movies and some pictures and just then I can quit whenever I want. There is this element of addiction that is really powerful.
Well, I think to add to that, there's, teen brain naturally wants novelty. I mean, that's just developmentally it wants that. And media today offers that. And then on top of that, the teen brain wants risk. There's a desire for risk. And if we see boys just in the video game world, there's a struggle there with the violent pornographic type of content that boys are exposed to there. And what's fascinating is also teens tend to have this desire, this draw towards rewards more than, and their brain responds much more to the rewards than the consequences. And so if you're trying to say, hey, these issues can happen, most teens may listen to that, but may not absorb it because in the moment there's a reward calling for them. So in essence, we need to teach our kids what healthy is, what it means to have a healthy sexuality, a healthy perception on that, so that they can enter in with discernment.
Yes.
And be able to make the decision in the moment that is the healthiest decision for them, for their future relationships. Man, that requires that ongoing conversation you were talking about. Let's talk about that. What does a healthy sexual culture look like in a home?
Well, like I said at the beginning, I think it really starts when your kids are young. I think doing things like using the actual names for every part of the body, because that eliminates shame. And it says that every part of your body, you know, from your elbows to your hair to every other part, is designed by God, and it has a purpose, and it is not bad or shameful. And I think that's a really important aspect of creating a healthy sexual culture in your home, is to eliminate shame. It's being really open to your kids when they ask questions, not shutting them down, saying things like, well, we don't talk about that. Instead, answering them as honestly and appropriately as you can. So if your, 5-year-old asks you a question, your answer might be different than what you would say to your 15-year-old, but you still answer them. You just answer in an age appropriate way.
Yes.
I think that is really valuable. I think too, being open to organic moments as they happen, and using those opportunities to talk to your kids. We were talking about anime, and one time we were driving on the road and a car pulled up right next to us at the stoplight, and it was covered in very sexualized anime stickers. And the electricity in the air in our car just changed. Like, you could just see everybody saw it, everybody thought about it. We knew what was happening. And in that moment, I chose to say, hey, let's talk about that car right next to us, because we all saw it. What's going on over there? Why do you think that guy thinks it's okay to have those stickers on his car objectifying women? Maybe nobody ever told him that that's not the right way to treat women.
That's good.
Even with stickers on our car. To engage in those kind of conversations with our kids, I believe, is creating a healthy sexual culture. It's not one of shame. It's not one of fear. It's one that acknowledges God created every part of us, and we honor him and we honor each other by treating each other well. Those are the ways that we can create a healthy sexual culture in our home.
It's so good, Greta. I just love what you're saying. It's just so healthy, and it's building blocks, right? You're starting
Yes.
young, building these blocks of God has this beautiful intention for our sexuality. He has the best way. It's laid out in the Bible. It's the way of life, joy, and peace. But the enemy wants to rip us off, and there's another way that he's tempting us towards all the time. I love what you're saying. You also advocate for families developing a porn plan for their children. Can you speak to that? What does that look like?
Yes. This is one of the most powerful and simple ways for parents to equip their kids with the tools to reject pornography, especially that accidental exposure we were talking about at the beginning. When kids, ages 8 to 12 are the most at risk for seeing porn the first time accidentally in those ages, we need to give them a plan for what to do when they see it. So it can be as simple as telling your kids, your 8-year-old, your 9-year-old, here is this thing called pornography. It is dangerous and it's bad for your body, your brain, and your heart. I'm here to protect you. I want you to know what to do if you see it. And then you tell them, if you see it on a phone, when you're playing, games on my phone, or on a tablet, when you're using your tablet for school or to draw fun pictures, or if somebody else shows you something on their screen, an older kid, your friend, a grown-up, here's what I want you to do. Turn the phone over, turn the tablet off. Say to that person, I don't want to look at that. And then I want you to walk away from the screen, whatever screen it is, walk away from it. Come find me or dad, grandma, grandpa, somebody safe. Say, I think I saw pornography. Can you help me? If you give those kids of yours just that real simple action plan, they know what to do if they see it, and they know to walk away, and they know to talk to you.
Wow.
Those are really powerful tools, and that's for any age kid.
Yeah.
But it is especially powerful for those kids in that age of first time accidental exposure. They know what to do, and it's not so frightening because they're prepared.
This is so great. I'm literally going to go home and to talk to especially my oldest about what you exactly just said, because it keeps them from going to the shame and hiding place. It keeps it from being the secret. Oh no, I think I just messed up in seeing something. I've got to hide it. And I think that's where so many kids get into trouble, is the hiding and the isolation and the shame. And so I just love that plan. That's so fabulous. And I know that everyone listening right now is just so thankful for what you shared, Greta.
I would say one addition to the shame piece is also the curiosity piece.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, when even a child sees pornography, the body can often have a response. It might be a response of, oh, I feel like afraid of what I saw, or I feel like disgusted by what I saw, or I feel curious about what I saw. If we don't talk to our kids, then that disgusting feeling or the scared feeling could move them to shame, but the curiosity piece could move them back to pornography. If we haven't told them, buddy, this is not good for you, sweetheart, this is bad for you, then they could go back to pornography because we haven't prepared them to know to stay away from it. So there are multiple reasons why we need to give our kids those tools to reject pornography.
And it requires that relational connectedness.
Yeah.
And man, I totally get it for parents. There's this immediate fear, oh no, my child has seen pornography. And now they go towards, why could you do that? Because there's this angst in there. They are now in bondage in their mind, in their brain, and spiritually. There's this, you want freedom for your kids, and it's so important to articulate that. Hey, honey, I would die for you, and I want you to have the most amazing sexual relationship with your spouse someday. These lies are going to throw things off for you in the future. I want the very best for you. This is not about control. This is really about guiding you through this process where there's so many different temptations that are going to come your way to try to distract you. And you want to have a history that you want to remember. And this one is one that can really throw you off track. Now, let's say a parent is in that moment, that panic today, where their child comes to them, and we've had this on our counseling line here at Focus on the Family. And by the way, if you find yourself in this situation, know that we have a group of counselors here at Focus on the Family ready to talk to you. Just call 1-800, the letter A and the word family, 1-800-232-6459. They'll talk you through this. And we've gotten plenty of calls from parents with 8, 9, 10-year-olds, as we were talking about here, that have accidental exposure, and they're saying, Mom, Dad, I saw pornography. I've been looking at pornography now for a while. What does a parent do in that moment? How do they respond? What next for that parent that's in the place of panic now?
I would say in that moment, if you can go to the Lord in prayer immediately and ask the Holy Spirit to fill you with his gentleness, his patience, his kindness, because so often in that moment, we want to respond out of our own fear, our own hurt, our own shame, our own stories, or even anger at our child, disappointment, frustration. There's so many emotions swirling. So if we can, with the power of God, set those negative things aside and come to our child with love and compassion and grace and say, I am so sorry for what you have seen. I love you. I want to give you something better. I want to help you out of this. Whether they've seen it one time or they've seen it 100 times, our response is the same. I'm so sorry for what you've seen. This is not God's plan for sex. It is not his good gift. It is Satan trying to mess it up, and he is trying to hurt you. And I don't want to let that happen. If that can be the foundation of our response, and then we move into other things like getting them counseling if they need it, getting them, a safer plan with screens. All of those things need to be put into place. But that initial response is, I love you. I'm here for you. God loves you. We want to get you help. That is a very powerful response because they know you're a safe place. And that's what they need in that moment. They need safety because they're hurting.
I'm living in kind of a space where I'm reading a lot and, just trying to be a diligent parent with all the different areas of parenting, but including this one. We're all trying our best, right? What are some healthy tools that we can file away, of just best practices when it comes to guiding our kids in this area? You hear, leave a door open. Don't let a kid be on a screen with a closed door in their room. What are some other ideas for us? What are some guardians that we can put in place?
Well, when our kids are young, the ideal is you are with them in their screen time. Whether that means if they want to look something up on Google, they ask you and you say, sure, let me sit down and help you look for that. Or if they're playing a video game, they're not with headphones on playing with a stranger and you cannot hear the interactions. They're in the living room. They don't have headphones on, even though that means you have to listen to the annoying sounds of that video game. You make that sacrifice because it's for their safety. I would go even one step farther with that they don't play games with strangers,
Yes.
because that allows a stranger to have access to your kids. Yes, it's through a video game and you think, oh, that's just a bunch of, 12-year-olds playing, but no, there are predators on video games.
Yeah.
So in the early years, their screen time is extraordinarily limited, and it is in partnership with you. As they get older and they enter the teen years, you still are their partner, but it looks different. If they are using Google, for example, they're not going to come sit down next to you at age 18 and do a Google search with you by their side. But you've taught them how to use the internet as safely as possible. And like you said earlier, Danny, to use discernment. And so, like, what does it look like to do a safe Google search? Have you enacted things on their computers and their devices to potentially
Protect or block. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So using like software and accountability apps, those are all great things to do. But you want to enter a phase of training when they get older. And I also would really encourage parents to not simply rely on the accountability software, the engaging of parental controls on devices. Like, those things are important, they're valuable, but they do not replace conversation, because we all know those things have failed us at some point or another, and they will fail our kids. And in those cases, you want them to be able to come to you and say,
Yes.
hey, this thing, I saw this, it didn't get blocked. I just want to let you know. I think sharing passwords is a great thing. My husband and I have access to everything we're doing, each other's devices. Our kids do too. They're old enough now that they could look at what we're doing. We're not ashamed. We're not hiding anything, and vice versa. Those are some of the things that we can do as parents.
That's great.
Yeah, and Greta, with those the software that's out there, they're improving. They're getting better and better. I know AI generated ones that are able to see the images within less than a second and block those. Like Canopy has that, and then there's Covenant Eyes and Net Nanny and Norton, and there's so much software out there that it helps with the accidental exposure, but it doesn't solve the issue. And you're right.
Yeah.
It just helps with those moments that we know predators or predatory organizations are trying to strategically lure kids in at an early age, and they're finding the address to get close to a child's page that they're looking at. And so this software knows that and is able to block those. So as parents, we do need to be intentional with that, along with the conversations. And what does that ongoing daily conversation look like with our kids that is life-giving and sets up this do this instead over time for a child, let's say starting at 5? How does that conversation take shape all the way into their preteen years and teen years to help them not get stuck on the don't, but looking towards a vision for their sexuality?
Well, I think that sexuality is all about relationship, right? It's about this deep, intimate connection with our spouse. And so if we begin to teach our kids from a young age what that looks like, and we bring it into their life intentionally, it gives them the opportunity to experience deep, intimate relationship without the sexual aspect, but to push them towards that when the time is right. And so I think it's so incredibly important that we as families, we pursue relationship and connection through activities, through experiences, through spending intentional time together. We're so busy. It's so easy for us to just go through the motions of day by day without carving out time to be together. And that might just be like spending a half an hour together reading a book before bedtime with our littles, right? Spending time together with their friends, making sure our home is a place where their friends are welcome, where we invite them to go to the park with us. Like, we provide space for relationships to flourish. Our kids begin to experience the joy of real relationship, real connection with us as a family and with their friends. And that only grows through the teen years. Man, we as parents of teens, we need to provide space for them to spend time with their friends at our home, with one another. And I think that's a really powerful way for us to reject pornography, for them to reject pornography. Pornography is all about isolation and loneliness, and it wants to make you hide, right? But relationship, real relationship, encourages us to be together, to be in connection. And so we need to provide that for our kids. It's so important.
Absolutely. In our final few minutes that we have left, Greta, I one of the questions that I feel like is so synonymous really with this issue is the issue of masturbation, and how can we speak to our kids in a healthy way about this component? What age does that start? What advice do you give in that area?
Well, I have a whole chapter on this.
Okay.
I would imagine.
It's such a big issue, and it's probably one of the most asked questions I get from parents. None of us feel comfortable talking about it, but I think, and for me, it was actually a really painful topic to write about, because pornography and masturbation are something that, happen together. And so it was a painful part of our marriage story. It took a while to write the chapter. So I think the number one thing we need to address here is that the world wants all of us to believe that masturbation is perfectly harmless, that there is nothing wrong with it. And I don't think that that is the whole story. It can be extremely damaging. And one of the reasons, and it's not something I hear talked about a lot, is that masturbation is often a way that people deal with an underlying problem, right? Just like we might go to scrolling endlessly, or online shopping, or, eating too much of an unhealthy food. There's an underlying issue. It might be anxiety. It might be stress. It might be boredom for kids, often for teens, boredom, depression, feeling left out. And so masturbation can be the tool to get that quick dopamine hit and to be like, okay, I feel better, I'll move on, but never addressing the real problem that's at hand.
I see.
And so I think it's very important for us to talk to our kids about healthy coping mechanisms. When we have those negative feelings, what do we do with them? How do we handle them in a healthy way? Call a friend, go for a walk, listen to worship music, go in the kitchen and be with your family, bake something, like do something productive with your time with those feelings instead of turning to masturbation. That's just one small piece of the story, but I think it's an important one that
Definitely
isn't talked about a lot.
Masturbation leads us away from relationship. God built us for relationship and for connection and community, and masturbation leads to isolation and
And with that, there's this fantasy world that person begins to create. And what I've noticed with clients with this is that anger goes up for them. Sometimes it's late at night that they're struggling, so they can't reach out to people, and it's good for parents to know that if you tell your child, if they're struggling with this and they're open with you on this topic, let them know there's a period of time that the dopamine goes super high anticipating that hit. And if they can do something else, and you said walk around or do something, if they can write it out 15, 20, 30 minutes, and the dopamine will say, I guess we're not doing this, and it calms down. This is a big topic that parents wrestle with, and culture has definitely normalized this. And when I get this question, Greta, and I'm sure that this is what you are talking about with parents, is that this is about having a sexual relationship with a fantasy, and also violating your own body by doing this, and you're robbing your spouse, your relationships, from a deep part of who you are. Because our sexuality is one of the deepest ways we can love our spouse. It's a deep way of loving someone. And I've noticed an increase of loneliness with people, and there's this, in their imagination, as they're experiencing that, there's this false perception that they're having a relational connectedness with someone when they're not. And so when they're done, there's a tremendous amount of shame that happens. So it's so important for us as parents to openly ask the question, are you struggling
Yeah.
with this? Have your friends been talking about this? Because I almost guarantee that if you have, especially a teen boy that's in any type of sport, they're hearing about it in the locker room, and they may not think that you want to talk about it. Bring it up. Say, have you
That's
heard
good.
this word? What does this mean to you? Let's talk about it. Let's talk
Yeah.
openly. It's an important one to be intentional about. And Greta, here we have the 7 traits of effective parenting. We've been talking about that, and one big one that
Mm.
you brought up is grace. Grace in
Mm.
this conversation. We need to bring that to the table
That's good.
because it's about creating the bridge and the connection as we're talking with our kids about this very important topic. I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll be continuing the conversation, Greta.
Yeah,
Thank you
you've
for
been
being with
wonderful.
us. Appreciate it.
Mm.
So many
Thank
great
you for
resources.
having me.
Thank you. Loved this conversation.
Wow. It's such a needed conversation, Danny. And I'm really, really thankful too that we ended this conversation with this idea of grace, because none of us are going to get, these kind of important and somewhat pivotal conversations. We're not going to get it perfect, but God, we can lean on him for wisdom as we talk to our kids about porn, talk to them about sexuality. And I think just that we're bringing it up and we're really seeking to be intentionally talking about it is so key and so important for our kids. And it's not just a one and done type of discussion to have with our children too. I think that's something that we talk about a lot here at Practice Makes Parent when it comes to sexuality. It's an ongoing open discussion about this. And we're encouraging this kind of openness from our children, that there's no shame in them coming to us about what they're struggling with or what they might have heard at school or from a friend. And we're creating this open, ongoing conversation about it. And we do have a number of resources that we can share with listeners in the show notes. And we will also send you Greta's book, It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn, for a gift of any amount. But Danny, what were your reflections on this?
Yeah, Rebecca, I think I did love the grace piece to it. We do need to be patient with our kids as they're learning what it means to have lures all around them, those things that can hook them. And they're surrounded by them. And I think we need to point those out with our kids, that there are these hooks all around in culture. They're usually shiny. They look fine, that maybe they want to bump up against them. And as parents, we want the very best for our kids. And so as we see a life for them that is surrounded, where they're surrounded by these hooks, these lures, we want to help them recognize them, see them for what they are. And one big one is pornography. And we also, as parents, I think we didn't get to talk much about this, but that whole continuum, that pornography can begin within commercials almost for some kids, where they've been exposed to something that is very seductive just on a commercial on TV, and their curiosity has been piqued, and they're beginning on a road to exploring more. And that's why as parents, we need to open up the conversations, not out of emergency or urgency to fix things, but out of setting up a foundation. And then in the conversations, having grace that this is tough. It's difficult for kids growing up in an age that's very visual, very visually stimulated, and with a lot of availability with pornography. So I think as you're thinking about this as a couple, or if you're a single parent, make sure you're figuring out, when do I want to start with each of the kids talking about sexuality? Have I put parameters or certain filters on devices and things my kids are going to be on to minimize some of those lures and hooks that they could be exposed to? And if you need some help and would like to talk to a licensed counselor about some things maybe going on in your family, or to get some more tips, give us a call at 1-800, the letter A and the word family. And that's 1-800-232-6459. It's in the show notes. And we'll arrange to spend some time with you over the phone, as well as refer you to a vetted counselor. They go through quite a process to get on our list. They're a Christian counselor in your area. We hope you reach out if you need that.
Well, it is Q&A time. I love this part of our show, Danny. Today's email question comes from a listener in Wyoming. she wants to remain anonymous, but here's what she asked. Dear Practice Makes Parent team, my 13-year-old son loves video games. They are extremely violent and I don't like them, but it is something that he and his father bond over. I've noticed that his taste in music has gone into the harder metal scene as well. Most of the time, I can't understand the words, but I can tell it's an aggression release for him because he's bouncing off the walls when he listens to it. His dad says it's normal boy behavior, but is it really? I've asked his dad to make sure that none of the music is satanic, but when I think about what this violence and aggressive expression might be doing to his psyche, I get very disturbed. Am I wrong to be so concerned? And what are the warning signs that he's crossing over to the dark side? Signed, One Worried Mama. And I just want to say, Danny, before you share your advice and your wisdom with this, I think this mama is being very diligent and being protective in a good way of her son and being very in tune and very discerning. And, just this idea, and I remember it kind of coming through to me either through youth group, my parents, just mentors, multiple people that were speaking into my life in my teen years, that what goes into our minds will come out in our life at some point.
Yes.
And I think that's what she's seeing already. And I love that she's being attentive to that and protective of her son. What would you say to this concerned mama?
And you're absolutely right, Rebecca. What we're consuming in our brain does impact us. Now, what's been fascinating with research around this topic is that not all kids show violent behavior with violent video games, but there are boys that are very susceptible to a more aggressive response and reaction and expression. And so in this one, it seems that there is concern. The metal scene, when you go to the violent video games, there are a lot of bad words. There's sometimes sexual violence also in those video games. So it usually has the rating of mature for a reason for an adult to be using it. So if your husband chooses to use it, that's up to him. And he may be very different where it doesn't impact him. Yet his son, he needs to be aware of the fact that his son may be impacted by this because of things happening with friends. He feels power with this, or some anger that he's not knowing how to deal with. And certainly it's a bonding thing. Maybe there can be a new thing they bond over. This is something that I get to talk about a lot with moms and dads, the power of video games, where for boys, it's a way to gain power and control and respect in certain instances, especially if they're going online or on YouTube. And it doesn't sound like that may be the case here. It sounds like it's just the boy and the dad, but they may be going online. And that creates a whole different world of comparison and getting sucked into that. And I'd say that a big question here is, what is the warning sign that things have crossed over? When you see him not being able to put it down, if you say, no, you can't play it today, and there's a strong, angry reaction, there's a bit of an addiction there, and something else is at stake now with these violent video games that he is relying on. And I think that the next step, a good step, would be to maybe visit with a counselor or a pastor, someone that could be a neutral party to help you both sort this out and be united in this. Because what this makes you is the bad cop in this. If your husband's not aligned with you, it could be undermined. Maybe you're out of town. He goes, hey, maybe we'll do a game real quick. And then that undermines that. And then he's going to learn how to maybe sneak it. And that's not the point here. It's about teaching your son what is healthy for his brain and a healthy way to express anger and maybe loneliness, maybe powerlessness, some other big emotions he's trying to solve through the video games, or the video games may have helped him feel a certain way. And let's find other ways to feel that rather than having to do this. And as you're noticing the music go to a certain place, that's another warning sign where he's trying to express more and more anger. And what video games do, it reinforces a behavior. So if you're angry and you're playing that and you're truly playing out of anger and frustration and you're getting into it, your brain thinks and perceives as if you're in that situation, and it begins to rehearse that. And it can lead to more aggressive behaviors. It can also lead to more kind of dark thinking and desensitizing to certain personalities,
Yes.
not everyone. And but I would say this one worried mama is on the right track to put some
Yes.
boundaries and limits on this.
Yes, and I love what you said about her having a conversation too with her husband and them getting on the same page about it, and
Yes.
and maybe seeking counsel to get on the same page about it. Danny, such great ideas and thoughts, and thank you, worried mama. Thank you for your question and your vulnerability in that question, and I know it's so helpful for all that are listening right now. Hopefully, this has alleviated some of the worry for you. We are going to send you Danny's wonderful book, 7 Traits of Effective Parenting, to say thanks for participating in the show. And we also want you to participate as well. So send us your questions by clicking the link in the show notes.
Well, was this show helpful to you? We hope so. And we consider this a dialogue, and we're interested in what you think. So please leave us your reviews, leave us comments.
Yes.
We want to continue the conversation with you here with us at the table. And also, we're kicking off the summer season, and this is a time of year that vacation plans take precedence over benevolent financial support. If you are regularly listening to Practice Makes Parent and you're referring the link to your friends, we appreciate that. And would you also consider supporting the show with a tax-deductible donation? We'd appreciate that as well.
And we hope that you're talking about what you've heard with your friends as you have coffee, go on play dates, or while you're at church. Your word of mouth advertising is one of the highest compliments that you can give us. So thank you in advance for that, and to those of you that are already doing it. Next week, we'll be hearing from Dr. John Trent and Dr. Dewey Wilson about teaching children relational intelligence. It's a fascinating topic and one that will help your children as they grow up.
So we hope you'll tune in. I'm Dr. Danny Huerta.
And I'm Rebecca St. James. Join us next time for more tips for transforming your parenting on Practice Makes Parent.